Welcome back everybody, this is GDS. This video is going to be on magic items. Magic items are important not only in regular fantasy, but also in dark fantasy, sci-fi, horror. What we're going to do is figure out why do we like magic items? What makes them cool? And then we're going to use that knowledge to make sure that we optimize the way we use magic items in our games. But before we start this video, I want you to tell me in the comments below what is the most interesting magic item that you were given as a player or that you gave a player as a GM? And also we have a Discord if you want to join the conversation. The link is going to be in the nonsense below. I think we like magic items for 4 reasons. They make players feel special. They give you interesting and unique mechanics that are fun to use. They often come with cool or epic lore or past. And magic items can be terribly cursed, which is fun and cool and also great for killing your players, the purpose of the GM. We're going to talk about that. For each of those 4 elements, I'm going to give you some do's and some don'ts. So let's start with the first element, which is making players feel special. Some do's. Give characters items that work well with their theme or fantasy or mechanics. This will make characters feel special for having this item, especially if you, as the GM, made this item specifically for them. You probably know, as the GM, what this character could use, and you also probably know what kind of fantasy the player is trying to fulfill with the character that they're playing. So you can narrowly tailor the magic items you give them to appeal to those things. And if you don't know those things, you can just ask the player, or give them a funny hypothetical, like, hypothetically, if you were to get a magic item, would you prefer this one or this one? Now, of course, we know that the character has no reason to have influence over what they're going to find in the next dungeon. But here we're specifically talking about the player and not their character. So I think it's actually okay to collaborate with the GM if you're a player, or for the GM to collaborate with the players. I think some of my coolest and best moments in ttrpgs have come from this kind of collaboration. Plus, I think it's fun to give players some influence on how the world works, and seems fair, especially for a magic item which can come to define a character. So here are some don'ts for magic items when it comes to making players feel special. Don't make a magic item that just casts a regular spell or activates a regular class feature. Give magic items special mechanics. This is important so players feel, well, special. Personally, I've always found the Sword of X or Wand of Y items kind of boring for this exact reason. The magic items you give, I think, should do something that nothing else does. Now to the second point of why we like magic items, they offer interesting mechanics that are unique and fun to use. Magical items are unique and fun to use under 2 conditions. The first one is they have to be simple. The second one is they have to be distinguishable. What does that mean? What I mean for simple magic items is that they have a short description that's easy to understand and, most importantly, open to interpretation. Now, not all your magic items have to be super open-ended, but the more open-ended they are, the more they can be used in creative ways. Also, when items require some amount of interpretation, they are more powerful because they can be interpreted to apply in more scenarios. So that's one of the big do's. Keep it simple. Once you have a simple item, all you need to do is let the players use it. So with that in mind, here are some don'ts. Don't add too many conditions to be able to use the magic item. In my experience, some online GMs have the tendency to make really cool magic items, but as if they're afraid of their own authorial voice, hide them behind a bunch of weird conditions and contingencies. These things often stop players from actually using those items. If your item is unreliable, for example, it requires skill checks, or you need to fulfill certain conditions before you can use it, players will almost only use it when they know for a fact they don't absolutely need its effect, because they know that they can't rely on it. In other words, it leads to situations which are not fun or dramatic. Same thing for attunement, by the way, except I'm not sure exactly how to critique attunement because I'm not 100% sure why it's there. It's not interesting, and it doesn't exist in any fantasy genre that I've seen. Whether or not these conditions are necessary for making the item technically balanced does not matter. One, because I don't care if it's balanced, and I don't think anyone should. If it's fun and cool, that's all that matters. And two, because that type of balance is really easy to fix. I've seen many online GMs ask if their magical items are too strong for level, say, 3. If you give your level 3 party magical items that are powerful enough to make them as strong as a level 10 party, that's completely fine, because there are plenty of level 10 monsters that you can throw at them. What would be a problem is if one character is more powerful than all the rest of the party because they have more or more powerful magical items. So make sure everybody gets equal attention when it comes to loot and magic items. Another don't punish players for using the items. Players won't use magical items if they are punishing. Magic items are rewards. We want to reward behavior that we want to encourage. So punishing the players for using the items doesn't make any sense. The items are there to be used and to be cool. Again, these types of drawbacks are not necessary to achieve balance. Just make cool items, and then the trick is let the players use them. I see this because I see many online GMs making homebrew magical items and then giving them a bunch of weird drawbacks to balance it out. Like, you get to use the wish spell once, but if you do, your character will get cancer and die in 6 months. That's just called make a wish. Another don't, and another way that I've seen that GMs punish players for using items, is giving the item a chance to break when players use it. This is another case of making the item unusable, which again, we don't want to do. One last thing on punishing the players, except this one is with a caveat, is that some magical items are by their nature consumable, which in a way is a type of drawback because you can only use it once and then it's gone. But I think consumables are actually okay. The only issue with consumables is hoarding. Players will save them for a future time that they will need them most, which means they are never going to use them. So I have 2 ideas on how you can maybe mitigate hoarding. The first one is give items expiration dates. So basically use it or lose it. The second one is to make it so every so often players need to use consumables, because otherwise they're going to lose. And you need to make that fact very clear. So to summarize, on one portion of making interesting magic items that are fun and unique is to keep it simple. Make simple magical items, and then most importantly, let the players use it. Just to illustrate my point, I'm going to give you just one bad example and one good example for that keep it simple rule. The first is bad. This bag has an interior space that can hold up to 500 pounds. The bag weighs 15 pounds. Retrieving an item from the bag, if the bag is overloaded, pierced, or torn, but the bag must be put right before it can be used again. Breathing creatures inside the bag can survive up to 10 divided by the number of creatures minimum 1 minute, after which placing a bag of holding inside an extra dimensional space instantly opens the gate to the astral plane. Any creature within 10 feet of the gate. I was going to read one more bad example, but I just don't have it in me. Now, some people might be thinking that the reason the other item's description was so long is to cover all the weird edge cases. But again, like I said before, I think it's in the edge cases and the interpretation that fun and creative uses can arise. So the fact that our description is open-ended, somewhat, is a feature, not a bug. Here is a good example from the same game. Ring of Invisibility. Regrettably requires attunement. While wearing this ring, you can turn invisible as an action. Anything you are wearing or carrying is invisible with you. You remain invisible until the ring is removed, until you attack or cast a spell, or until you use a bonus action to become invisible again. So, that was on keeping items simple in order to make sure that they're fun and unique. Remember that the second part of fun and unique items is to make sure they're distinguishable. Distinguishable from what? Well, from the rest of the character kit. You want to make sure that the items that you give players can be distinguished from the rest of everything else that they can do. So some do's for that is that items should have noticeable effects. And items should be deliberately used. So they shouldn't activate automatically. These will make even more sense when I give you the don'ts. Don't just give numerical benefits. Numerical benefits tend to blend into the rest of the character sheet and become forgettable. So I'm saying no to +1 sword or 1d6 fire damage or extra AC. That said, keep in mind that numerical benefits can be made distinguishable in some cases with this fix. Imagine you have a +1 sword, and according to your calculation, the +1 sword means that every fight, the player hits one attack that they would otherwise miss. So instead of having a +1 sword, what you could do is have a regular sword, but give it an ability that can be used, say, once per combat, that makes it so it hits an attack, regardless of AC, and regardless of what the roll is. Mechanically, this is indistinguishable, but the player will notice using it, so it is distinguishable from the rest of their kits. So on to the third thing, which I think makes magical items nice to use, is that they tend to have cool, magical, mystical lore or past. So in this regard, here are some do's. Make a background for this artifact. Here are some questions you can ask yourself in order to build this background. Who made it? Why did they make it? Who are some famous or infamous users of this item? Who was the last owner of the item, and what happened to them? Here are some don'ts. Don't make the item too mechanically convoluted. Some people make interesting and cool mechanics the wrong way and add mechanics that are just too much. Other than the reasons we previously discussed, you don't want to do this, I think doing so devalues the epic lore of the artifact because it reduces it to mechanics, and then it feels more like a tool than a magical item. The other don't, in my opinion, is don't give players magical items that are mundane or useless. I say this because I have seen online GMs make lists of mundane magical items because they find them interesting. And to be fair, mundane magical items can be interesting, but the problem is if you give it to players, they are forgettable, because by being mundane and useless, the players never use them. So players who receive them are going to laugh once and then forget they ever existed. I have a friend who is a data scientist, and we did a comprehensive study on multiple ttrpg communities on the web. We found that not a single player in the world cares about your mundane magical items. Anyways, if you like mundane magical items, it's fine, just a divergence of opinions. The fourth point, and the final one, on why magical items are neat, is when they are cursed, and most importantly, when they can be used to kill your players. I think cursed magical items are severely underused. I think they remind players that the world is a weird and dangerous place, and that you probably shouldn't put on anything you find in the dungeon. So here are some do's. The most important one, kill your players. I hope you take this advice because I am taking a risk telling you this. Last time I made a video about killing your players and not their characters, my parole officer called and they said if I ever do this ever again. Anyways, using cursed items as a GM can be tricky because it can feel to players who receive them like you are tricking them. Like you thought this was a magic item, but aha, I got you. You want to avoid tricking. It feels bad. Tricking is bad. If you're the GM, don't trick your players. Tricking is also extraordinarily easy. You're the GM and you control everything the characters perceive. You can always trick them. Don't trick them. Instead, you should be killing them like we discussed. I seriously think cursed magical items should be trying to actively kill the players. For example, a necklace that when you put it on will start strangling you and requires, say, a DC 20 strength saving throw in order to take off, otherwise you take damage every round. Or maybe an eerie statue of a monkey with gems for eyes that, when you take it aboard a ship, that ship will sink before reaching its destination. Or a staff that, when you activate it, will teleport you to a random location in a radius of 30 feet, but it can also teleport you into walls, which is bad news. These are not only funny or interesting or dangerous or boring, whatever it is you think they can also be used as adventure hooks and tools. For example, let's go lift that curse, or let's use this cursed item against someone else. Another difficulty with cursed magic items that can feel like tricking your players is that players in your game might not know that an item might be cursed, so they'll just assume that it's not. I think I found at least one way to solve this, and I can say for certainty it has never not worked. You ask for an Arcana check, or if you don't play D&D, whatever it is you do, And if they roll high, you tell them you know this item is magical and you know it's cursed. If they roll in the middle, you tell them you know this item is magical, you're not sure if it's cursed or not. And if they roll low, then you tell them you don't know if it's magical, let alone whether or not it's cursed. These options imply to your players that they might be cursed without telling them, so they'll feel clever. Maybe. You could also just tell them before the game, FYI, my game has cursed items, so watch out. The other do, I think, for cursed magical items is form an opinion on whether cursed magical items are even right for your game. If magic being dangerous or unpredictable is just not a part of your game, then just don't use cursed magical items. That's fine. So some don'ts for cursed magical items, like we said, don't trick your players. But also, and I say this because I've seen this specific thing before online GMs, again, not being able to take something off, in my opinion, is not an interesting curse. And in D&D specifically, it's not detrimental. When was the last time you ever changed your armor or equipment in D&D? And how many times does it happen in a campaign? Adventurers just live in their armor and never shower. The last don't for cursed magical items is don't just make it so it breaks when you use it and have that be the curse. We said before why it's a bad idea, but here specifically, there's just so much else you could do, such as killing your players. That's everything I have on magical items and why you should use them and what makes them cool and how we can capitalize on that to make the best of magical items in our games. Magical items make players feel special. They offer interesting mechanics that are unique and fun to use. They have cool, mysterious lore or past. And they can be cursed, which is fun and exciting unless you're the one being cursed. In that case, it's probably deadly. If you like that video, take your face and smash it into the screen, let's say an odd number of times around the space of the like button. If your screen is not a touch screen, then just use your mouse and click it once, that'll work. If you want to see more, please subscribe, and again, we have a Discord, and the link is going to be in the nonsense below. I don't have many comments, this is a small channel. If you comment below, I'm going to see it, and heart it, and probably respond to it, so let's get a conversation going. I'll see you later.